I remember putting my kids to bed at night when they were young, giving them the security and comfort of knowing that their worries should be about their little life, not the big issues of financially and emotionally supporting them, giving them a roof over their heads, food, clothes, and the importance of having a safe place in which to sleep, a bed of their own, which may seem like a privilege that if we can, every child should be able to experience. I think it's actually not a privilege, but in fact, a rite of passage. A rite of passage is an event, ceremony, or experience that marks a milestone in a person's life. Many are cultural, religious, social, and professional across the globe. They range from early age in some cultures, like Japan, as a 3-year-old girl being allowed to grow long hair, and at age 7, shifting from a rope belt to an obi for their kimono. For a boy at age 5, being allowed to wear a hakama, a formal garment. Clothing for both represents entering into the formal stage of middle childhood. Various tribal rituals indicate the growth of an individual to the next level of development and eventually reaching adulthood. Rites of passage indicating milestones have also entered our social, educational, and professional world. With things like marriage ceremonies, funerals, 12-step programs, promotions, passing tests to the next level, certifications, graduations, licenses, there are also many religious and spiritual milestones, from Deepak Chopra's 7 stages of spiritual development to baptisms to B'nai mitzvahs and so much more. One U.S. cultural rite of passage is something I hadn't really thought about until I read about how my guest volunteers his time. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. And for all of you followers, Small and Gutsy has just been granted nonprofit 501c3 status. We are thrilled to have moved in this direction, enabling us to continue to meet our vision of interviewing as many smaller nonprofits and social impact organizations as we can. So please pass along any valuable information you hear today to others and send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at lwitkoff@gmail.com. That's 2 T's and 2 F's. One U.S. cultural rite of passage is something I hadn't really thought about until I read about how my guest volunteers his time. This more typical rite of passage is moving from a crib or a parent, guardian, sibling shared bed to one's very own bed. This milestone represents so many things in our culture that often go unnoticed or unrecognized that are truly significant. Having the capacity of sleeping independently by means of having the privilege of having one's own bed begins to create a feeling of ownership over oneself, the feeling of self-reliance, which builds self-esteem. Having one's own space becomes a sacred spot or a sacred place which is theirs to set up, take care of, decorate, love within the natural shelter of home. It is so much more than just a bed. For many parents or guardians who can afford beds, it becomes an automatic expectation and a feeling sometimes of moving forward for their child in healthy ways, even if they keep getting up in the middle of the night to sneak into their parents' bed. But for a child who has never had the experience of transitioning at a very young age, this becomes a journey of self-reliance that can translate into so many positive steps toward independence that may not have been a previous, more typical step due to financial constraints. Sleep in Heavenly Peace, our featured nonprofit organization, believes that a bed is a basic need for the best physical, emotional, and mental support that a child needs. They are a national organization based in Idaho, but we are focusing on one of their growing chapters in Texas. This is a response to the call of a national problem, one bed at a time, one town at a time. These children end up sleeping on couches, blankets, and even floors, and this can affect their happiness and health, and often results in issues that can start as early as age 5. In teenagers, anxiety and depression are linked to poor sleeping habits 27% and 69% of the time, respectively. Kids who don't sleep well don't grow as well as their peers. Plenty of sleep usually translates to better grades, improved emotional health, and a healthier home life. During sleep, cells can repair themselves, leading to better physical health. The brain and body release important hormones during a good night's sleep, leading to better physical and emotional health. Kids who don't get enough sleep tend to struggle with irritability, forgetfulness, and emotional regulation. Interestingly enough, I have been dealing with my own personal health issue, which many of you know. And one of the things that I try to do outside of things like mindfulness and my own spirituality and connection to something bigger than myself is sleep. When I get a good night's sleep, I'm a completely different person that perceives myself as very healthy, even going through a health challenge. All children deserve this as well. All children deserve a safe, comfortable place to lay their heads. Across the U.S., too many boys and girls go without a bed or even a pillow to sleep on. Sleep in Heavenly Peace is made up of over 200 chapters and thousands of volunteers dedicated to sharing awareness of this problem in order to help get kids off the floor in every town. These volunteers are dedicated to building, assembling, and delivering top-notch bunk beds to children and families in need. Their organization has grown steadily over time, and they are working on opening more chapters to serve more people. They serve children and youth ages 3 to 17, and their motto is, "No kid sleeps on the floor in our town." I love that. I am so honored to introduce my guest today, Will Warren, who leads a local chapter in Montgomery County, Texas, of 100% volunteers who build, deliver, and install twin beds and twin bunk beds. Each child will also receive a new mattress and bedding, sheets, pillow, comforter, or quilt. They are completely donation driven. Since their chapter's founding 2 years ago, they have built and delivered about 900 beds. Each month, they have a bed built event with close to 120 volunteers working at 10 different workstations, and they are fortunate to partner with other nonprofits and child protective services. So let's get started. Welcome, Will. Share with me your passion about beds for children and how you got started. It's a fascinating organization, and I am truly inspired by what you have done, what your chapter has done, and other chapters in the U.S. So welcome.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me. Excuse me. Do you prefer Laura or Dr. Whitcoff?
Oh, Laura, please,
Okay.
always. Thank you.
No, thank you, Laura. That was a very beautiful introduction. I think, the idea of child bedlessness was never a thought in my mind. It's interesting you mentioned Japanese culture. I lived there for 2 years in Japan. They often sleep in beds, but traditional Japanese society, they sleep on the floor. They have tatami mats and, or what do they call it? Futon. So, it's interesting how every culture has their own approach to sleeping, but I think sleep is such a privilege and a luxury for many people. And as I get older, I wish I slept better too. So for these kids that we're delivering beds to, they might not be aware that it's an issue themselves. That's their home, that's their life, and wherever they come from, whatever part of the country or other countries, they end up in Montgomery County. They know because their friends have beds or their other family members have beds. And as a child, all you're doing is comparing, and adults do that too. It's all just a comparative experience. Right. And that often leads to understanding what's right or wrong in our life. When I got involved with another chapter in Northwest Houston about 4 years ago, I was just volunteering because my employer at the time wanted us to do outreach in the community. And one of my colleagues had found Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And we went out there and we did bed builds and bed deliveries. And it was interesting because I love doing sanding. I'm not very technical. Sanding is kind of nice. I'm actually an introvert. For a while, I just didn't have to talk when I'm sanding. And then we went out for a bed delivery the first time, and I'm not very handy, but I got to see how we build the beds. And the gentleman leading us was very, supportive and helpful. And all these gentlemen, a lot of the leaders of this chapter were retired gentlemen, and they were at a different phase of their life than me, where I'm active in my career. But I saw what they were doing and it had an impact. And the first delivery I was involved with was a family from where I'm from California. We went out to the home, and it was an apartment and or a townhome, and we built about, I think, 5 beds. And there were 6 children in the family, a little infant. And it was just surreal because the kids were getting involved. These 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old kids were helping build the bed too. Then the pandemic happened, and right before the pandemic, I was laid off. And I still went back to that chapter during the pandemic. They were still building beds and delivering beds, with proper safety protocols and all that. And that was a tough time in my life. I wasn't working for 6 months. And then a little further after, I started a new career as a financial advisor. And there's a gentleman who I'd met at the chapter named Mike Fortner. And Mike had come up to me. He lives in Montgomery County. And he's like, "Oh, we're both here, volunteering." He's like, "We should bring a chapter up to Montgomery County someday." I'm like, "Yes, we should." Because at that time, there was no beds being provided from Montgomery County zip codes. Northwest Houston could only deliver beds through their application process on the website to Northwest Houston zip code. So we started chatting, and then there was another gentleman named Tom Michael who has an extensive background with, fixing stuff, woodworking, everything. He wanted to be involved too, and he said, let's do it. So we decided to build our chapter in March of 2021. We went to training in San Antonio, me, Mike's spouse, Jennifer Hudson, who's also a co-founder, and Temmie Michael wasn't there, Tom Michael, but they're co-founders also. Temmie's Tom's wife. So we built 9 beds with the support of some other chapters at Tom's garage, essentially work garage, excuse me. And then the following week, we had a request for beds on Mother's Day. And it was pretty special. We went out and delivered beds on Mother's Day. So we're at 1,000 beds. So yesterday we delivered number 1,000.
Thank you. Yeah.
So child bedlessness is something that I talk about all the time. As co-president, co-founder, I receive emails and calls almost every day about families wanting to volunteer. The application for beds come through all the time. I don't process those. We have incredible volunteers that reach out to the families in English and Spanish and confirm all the details. So that way, 2, 3, 4 months down the road, we can show up and deliver a brand new bed with mattress and bedding for the child in need.
That's incredible. I mean, your story is beautiful because you also had gone through a challenging time, and recognizing that, I always think, and I've always been a volunteer and always dedicated my time to areas that I feel like are both giving, but I also get from it as well, because giving is getting very often. And it comes through so much in your story. And it really allowed you to connect with then the other folks who helped co-found the chapter in need, which is Montgomery County. So you've developed something beginning in 2021 in terms of the local chapter that did not exist before. So you have really built this with 2 other people, it sounds like, and now it is an entity there, and really needed, because it sounds like if it's your 1,000th bed, you're getting applications through your online portal on a regular basis. So share with me having one of, a few of the children in the family help you build. What was that like?
Yeah, it's great. It's interactive. I'm not going to say all families are this way, but many of the families we deliver beds to are single parent households. The great thing about our chapter, and all chapters would be the same, is that it's men and women delivering beds for boys and girls. We actually have a pink tool bag where we've had an all-female team go out, build the beds. I think it's very important for boys and girls to see women building beds too. It's not about, it's multi-generational, it's multi-gender, like multi-ethnic, like it's everything. It's the community that we serve. It represents our volunteer network. So I try to be more intentional when I go out. If I see a young boy or girl that's really curious, some of the kids are a little hesitant. They'll go hide in another room or hide out.
Right.
But if they're more, observant or more engaged, we try to bring them in, and with the parent watching, it's very safe. We have them hold the impact driver. They might help us make the bed, or usually the mom comes over and makes the bed fast on the weekend. I don't have kids, so that's sometimes the hardest part, is putting a fitted sheet on a mattress. Fortunately, they're twin mattresses. They're not giant mattresses, but we just want the children to feel like they're part of it, because, sometimes the hardest thing is to ask for help.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you do, you feel like you owe somebody back. And that's something I struggle with my whole life. I hate asking for help. So when we're giving something, I want them to feel invested in it, so they don't feel any obligation. Like families will sometimes give us cash, which we take as a donation, or food or water. Right. Or they'll just thank us. And we're not there for any of that, of course. We're just there to build a bed, deliver a bed, and make sure we want to see the child smile. We don't always take photos or video, because that's the parent's choice if they want to have photo or video. But when the kid's involved with the bed, it's extra special.
It's so wonderful. And what you're sharing is some of the data that I brought up earlier, which is really, it's about self-esteem. The other piece is that, there is so much shame. As you talked earlier in your introduction about comparison, they know if they're sleeping in a sibling's bed or a parent's bed or on the floor, that their kids at school, have gotten better night's sleep generally, or sleeping in a bed. And so there's this comparison. So many times I think there is a feeling of shame. So if they can participate in either giving you something to eat or water, or even a donation, or the kids participate, there's some ownership that's shared, and the piece about shame completely dissipates. I love the idea that you talk about with the piece about women and gender, and the important piece of showing that men and women work together, that it's multicultural, that within your volunteer group, You're reflecting your community. Tell me a little bit about the application process.
They can go to the main shpbeds.org, or they can go to our specific chapter website, request a bed. They click the link. It's not in Spanish, which is unfortunate, but it's in English. And they go through, they put their zip code, how many beds they need, the ages of the children. It's very, limited information required. And then that gets submitted. One of our team members, she's a great volunteer, Melissa, she'll call on the families, and she's bilingual, so she'll confirm all the details over the phone. We set, the date. Okay, we're going to come out in June or July. This is the date. Will you be there? Can you clear out the space in the room for the beds? We ask, what type of bedding does the child want? Do they want flowers? Do they want princess? Do they want,
love it.
X-Men? Like, that is something, it's customized. You talk about our possessions. Well, everybody wants a car when they're 16. Okay, sure. But you want the car you want, or the color you want. It's like that personalization. It's a customized bed experience. So when the child sees the type of bedding they want on their first bed ever, that just is another level of detail and care that makes it very special. So, and then the family waits, and it's sometimes hard to tell the family, for example, more recently, we had about 188 families waiting for beds.
Wow.
So yesterday we delivered 68. Those 188, we're going to try to get out there the next 2 to 3 months. And we've had days where we've delivered over 100. We target closer to 70, 75 beds delivered. And sometimes with the deliveries, the families aren't there, or there's a miscommunication. So we just try to stay in touch with the families and come back. If we show up and there's a functional bed there, we're not going to build a bed.
Right.
That's one of the requirements, is that we're not replacing an existing functional bed. That doesn't happen often, but generally we'll go out there and, within 4 to 5 hours on a Saturday, we've delivered close to 70 beds. And then we come back the next week or two and start building beds.
It's just amazing. So you have a production center that you work out of, obviously. I love the idea of customizing for these kids. And teenagers, to have that choice and investment, it not only feels special, but it feels like they were part of the process, even if they end up not helping to build the bed, because it was their visualization of what they would have wanted. And it comes true. It's an incredible experience for them, I'm sure. And for you all. And I'm sure when you start to put the beds together and build them on site, there are many aha moments, because you've done so many. Can you think of one that just stands out for you as, wow, I hadn't?
I'll share a few if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So the first one was that Mother's Day delivery, and we delivered to a family in the Willis area, which is North Montgomery County. And we went out there, and it was just our first delivery as a chapter. And it was, we were kind of probably hesitant or nervous, but we did it. And this family, it was a really difficult situation. They'd experienced water damage during a freeze. The beds were destroyed. So the kids, I guess, were getting teased at school for not having beds. So we went out there and built some bunk beds, and it was a great experience. So that was nice to take care of that family. And then another, about a year later, we went out for a bed delivery. And sometimes we'll show up to the apartment complex or mobile home complex or wherever residential property we're at. And the family's not there. I knocked on the door, and I was there with some of my volunteers. It was in the morning. And a lady opened the door, and she was, I just asked her, do you have a child that needs a bed? She asked what we're doing. And she said yes. So she let me in the house, and her son was sleeping on 2 mattresses in his room, a 7-year-old boy. It was cool because they didn't request a bed that day. They didn't know they're going to get a bed. So we built a bed. It was really special. The mom and son woke up. The mom and the son were playing video games in the room while we were building the bed. And, I've been speaking Spanish or trying to speak it for 30 years. So the boy asked me in Spanish, is this my bed forever? And I told him it was.
Oh, wow. Pretty emotional. I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about that. And because it was so last minute, you had bedding, and he was okay with the bedding, or what did you do about that?
We had bedding for a boy, I believe. So it was able to work out, it just worked out. And we had bedding for a boy, and we still have the mother sign the release form. We have a legal process. She gave us authorization or not to take photos. They accept the bed as is. It's a brand new bed, new mattress bedding. We don't come back and do maintenance on the beds. So that's a key component of what we're doing. And we, the tools required to disassemble a bed are not complicated. So that's a great thing. We know families are going to move and they're going to take it down. But I think it was just the adaptability in that moment of our group. We're like, sometimes we live in a world of red tape. And whether you work in the corporate world, government, or even nonprofit world, there's regulations and restrictions. And I think what I love about our chapters or our organization is that There's a simplicity to it. The mission is what guides everything. And if we're going to find a way to get a bed for a child, that it's going to happen.
And I think the beds are all made out of wood.
Correct. We use pine wood, and we partner with McCoy's, and we have in the past Lowe's and Home Depot, but we use pine wood, which is a great wood to work with, and also put a finish on it. Second to last step, actually, of our bed building process is we soak all the headboards, the side rails, the safety rails, in a special vinegar steel wool concoction mixture that smells terrible. It'll wreck your clothing. Mike's boys, actually, Clayton and Clay and Michael, they actually do that. And they're high school kids, so they're responsible for most of the dip tank. Other volunteers get involved. And then we put the signature SHP brand. Every headboard that we deliver has the SHP brand on it.
That's so great. It's because there's, again, so much meaning behind that. And there may be some of these kids who grow up and become volunteers themselves.
Yes, and that's funny you say that. When we share about our mission, I'll meet people that told me they slept on the floor, their life, and they're just like immediately connected to our cause. They come out, or they want to come out. One of my friends in the community, he was really interesting. He'd been out for a bed build, and one day he told me about his life, and he's like, "Here's a photo I want to show you." And it was a photo of him, and his feet were hanging off the bed. His sister's feet were hanging off the bed. He shared a bed with his two sisters. And the photo he showed me, he was probably in high school. He did not have his own bed, I think, until later in high school or in college. And he'd been out for a bed build. So people are often volunteering, and they don't tell you their connection to the mission.
Right.
And it could be very personal or not. Sometimes you just want to support humanity or kids or people in need. But when people have a very personal connection to our mission, it kind of reignites my passion for what we're doing. So not that I ever forget, but sometimes you just need another reminder, like, oh my gosh, this is impacting a lot of people.
You don't realize, because you think it's just simply building a bed, but it's so much more than that. So these building events, that when you actually build them, does that happen on a regular basis because you have such a huge need?
Great question. Yes, we have a monthly bed build, at least, usually the first or second Saturday of the month at a warehouse. We've been very blessed. The local Texas United Methodist Church, they have a disaster recovery building. We've been operating out of there for a while, since basically almost 2 years. And we store all of our inventory there, all of our bedding, all of our lumber. And when we're done, we bring everything out for the bed build. We bring everything out after the bed build. And then when the bed delivery shows up, all the families and volunteers meet there to load up. So the bed build is a consistent, and it's not that the bed build is actually, I would say, more popular in demand. The bed delivery, we don't need as many people, because we'll have about 7 or 8, 9 teams go out for the bed delivery. So let's just say, 60, 70, 80 people. But the bed build is more labor intensive. We have a setup shift at 5:30 to 8 a.m. And then the 8 to 12 is the bed build shift, with that about 100 and about 20 in the setup shift. We've had people come out once, sign up through our Facebook page. We have a Sign Up Genius event page built into our Facebook section. So
that's so great.
We have core volunteers that just started out. They heard about us, and now they're part of the leadership team. Jim Bearlack, Mike McElroy, Kurt has been out. Bailey. Just Julie. There's people that join, and they just become leaders right away because they connect to it, and they have the time and they have the passion. And I think people, you already know this, they're looking for something, and sometimes they find it and they just know. They just know.
So you're helping your community, and you also have built a community. So tell me a little bit about the leadership team and what that looks like. Is it more of a flat, or is it a hierarchy? Are you considered the executive director? Because it wasn't actually clear from the things that I read.
Sure. So we have titles like I'm co-president, Mike Fortner's co-president, Tom Michael's build manager. We kind of just put these titles on initially. I would say it's pretty flat. We do have some situations where we lean on other leaders to do more things, because that's what they're naturally good at. Personality driven, time driven, resource driven. One of my, I think, specific values that I bring to the organization, I try to find funding, because I've worked in financial services. I've applied for grants. We don't apply for grants at the chapter level. That's a great thing. We actually have a grants team in Idaho. So we can find a grant opportunity, send it to them, they'll screen it, they'll do the whole thing. That's one of my passions. So I try to find funding. Mike and Tom, they're multi-talented, very gifted. Mike's a business owner. Tom works for a local, governmental organization. So they've been around longer than me. I'm the youngest co-founder. Not that I'm young, but they have skills that I don't have, and I just lean on them. For example, Tom and Mike can drive a forklift. I can't. That forklift is very important when you're lifting all that stuff back into the warehouse. We all bring our different skills. I'm the most bilingual one out of all the leadership, which is kind of sad, but it's functional Spanish. So we all just lean on our strengths, but I would say it's more personality driven. Whoever kind of wants to take control, or not control, but make certain decisions, we'll let them do that. And there's no like pushback. We just need to get things done. So we're all about what's best for the chapter, what's best for the kids and our volunteers. And we are very aware that what we do in our, as business people can have an impact. And especially for me, I think I don't have children. So this chapter, this organization is like the closest I'll ever get to having something that could outlive me, which is special.
It is special. It's a legacy. It's your legacy in a lot of ways, as it is honestly your community's legacy, because the chapter represents the goodness in the community. And I love that. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I love how you have developed, and this is really honestly good business practice when you think about it. And as a consultant, I really try to push this sometimes when I don't see it, is you're really a strength-based approach. So when you're building your teams, you're looking for people who have different strengths, whatever it is. And so those people naturally go into that because you've created the channels for that to happen. That isn't always usual. Sometimes people, certainly in the business community, end up being put into, a round peg in a square hole, unfortunately, or whatever that expression is. And you're doing just the opposite because you're building it from the ground up and you're recognizing individual talents and strengths and capitalizing on those, which I think is a fundamentally way to create succession and legacy and to keep this going. Do you happen to know, are there chapters obviously in other states? How many states do you happen to know that? That might not be a fair question.
No, it's an excellent question. I should know that. I know we have closer to 320 or 30 chapters. I know they just opened one in Hawaii.
I love it. Oh, that's so great.
We are international. I should have shared that. We have a location in Canada. So great. Windsor, along the border, I believe. And then we also have, we are in another country I'm blanking right now, Bermuda.
Do you, other than training, do you ever visit some of the other chapters, or they'll call on you for help?
Right. So we went back probably last year to visit the original chapter. We were connected with Northwest Houston. They're a very busy, dynamic, awesome chapter. And the founder, Luke, came to town. Luke Mickelson started Sleep in Heavenly Peace in Idaho. Some of our other leadership team went to another chapter in Beaumont just to see their process. We share ideas. We have regional meetings like online. We generally don't always join them, but they're also going to have for the first time a Sleep in Heavenly Peace wide kind of reunion. We call ourselves SHP family. So we're going to have an event for the first time, all chapters are invited to North Carolina in fall. And I'll get to see chapters that I've never even met or knew existed and connect with other leaders later this year. So we're looking forward to that.
Oh, I love that, because you'll be able to share ideas. And it really is a huge opportunity to network. I feel like, particularly somewhat post-COVID, to an extent, everything is so much hybrid now. And so there's so many ways that ideas can be shared, and yet what you're creating is on the ground. And so there's this combination of where you can learn from others in this opportunity for a reunion or a retreat or event or a learning opportunity, and then you get to bring it back to introduce it on the ground to the folks who've remained in Montgomery County. It's really, it's unbelievable. And again, I can't say this enough, a bed is not just a bed. And you already know that. And so the giving back opportunity is multifold. And as much as your networks are created and people step up to volunteer, I think over time, you're going to have some of those recipients of actual beds step in and become volunteers for you. And I just love that. It's going to be generational over time. One quick thought is that, because you mentioned this and you are sort of the Spanish speaker kind of, and I get that. To have an application, and there may be other chapters that do that in another language, and particularly Spanish in the area you're in, is something that it sounds like that may happen.
I might be speaking out of turn. They might already have it, but we do have the release form, the disclosure in Spanish, fortunately.
Right.
So that is very important. When we show up, we clarify, and we know before the delivery if it's a Spanish-speaking family. So that way we send volunteers, and we've been blessed more recently, where we have volunteers who are fully bilingual. We make sure that when it's a Spanish-speaking family, that there's a team person, a volunteer going out there who's fluent.
Hard to believe you've only been doing this for a few years, but you were completely integrated into this, and it sounds like your network is growing. So I don't know if you know this, but toward the end of my podcast, I always have a round of quick and gutsy questions. So if you're ready for those quick and gutsies.
Sure, let's go. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, no, they're fun. What is at the top of your wish list for sleep and heavenly peace, but it cannot be money or funding? What's at the top of your wish list? And this could be for let's do it for your chapter. I want to do it specifically for your chapter, since that's what we're focused on.
Well, can I say two things?
Yes, you can say two things.
We don't lose touch with our mission. No kid sleeps on the floor in our town. And second, I really want us to be able to inspire other chapters in other areas going forward. 1,000 people a day are moving to Texas. And those 1,000 people, even though people might think otherwise, they're not necessarily coming to Texas, with tons of cash and tons of everything. They're coming here to start a new life or a better life. And so I want to build it. We have 254 counties in Texas.
Wow.
We probably have about close to 20 chapters, but there's huge areas of the state that are not. And Texas as my adopted home. I've been here 6 years. I think about national, international, but for Texas, which is going to be close to 50 million people, probably in the next 25, 30 years.
Wow.
I'm focused on Texas, making sure that every child has a chance to apply and receive a bed.
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, so those chapters will start popping up all over Texas, which is great. If you were to think of a song that describes sleep and heavenly peace, what would that be?
Wow, that's a good question. It's like, I don't know why this one came to my head, but Michael Bublé, I Just Haven't Met You Yet. It's funny that in life, if I hadn't met Mike.
Isn't that so true?
So it's one of those things when you go out, it's great, even if you don't, I'll talk to anybody. I mean, I'm social, all that, but it's like he came up to me and I had already thought about bringing the chapter up here. So the ideas, the dreams you have, don't hold them in. Share them with somebody, because you might meet somebody who has the same exact dream or idea of vision. And then you're on the same page, and then you're not alone. It's not some crazy idea. It becomes your life. It becomes your destiny. It becomes something that changes other people's lives.
Tell me, what makes sleep and heavenly peace gutsy? Because you're a gutsy chapter. What makes you gutsy?
I think we feel that everyone around is rooting for us. And we don't want to fail them. I think we all feel very fortunate to have the lives we have and the gifts that we've been given, whatever those are. And I think we feel an obligation to share with this community and to give back to a community that is in need, a community that is growing, a complex community. But we know the heart of this community, the culture, the service mindset. We know that people here, whether they live in a mansion or live in a smaller home or apartment or mobile home or wherever they live, they want purpose. They want peace for themselves, and they want peace for others. And I think that's an overall arching theme in my life, is I want to create peace for adults, children, all ages. But if you can create peace for a child, it's like that Frederick Douglass quote, it's a lot easier to heal or to help children than to repair broken men.
Yeah.
And I totally destroyed that quote. But I think the sooner you start with children and giving them chance and a hope and direction, that you can't go, it's so much harder to go back and to help adults when they're later in life to do whatever you need to do to make their life better. If you can help a child at a young age with their self-esteem, with their sense of purpose, with just the fact that they're loved and cared for by a total stranger. You think about people who grow up maybe in the foster youth system, and there's various reasons why people end up in the foster youth system or single parent households or whatever, is that if you have love of one biological parent, just one, you're ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah, it's
Or
true.
if you have love of your grandparents or aunts, uncles, or cousins, extended family, you're winning a game that you might not know you're winning, because it's actually rare to have that love. And I think having love from an organization where we come in as total strangers and we just want them to have a simple bed, but it's not simple, as you said, they start thinking, oh my gosh, I matter to total strangers. Well, maybe I matter to other total strangers. Maybe I'm amazing. And then it just snowballs, I hope, for the rest of their life.
I love that. And I think it is what makes you gutsy, and it is what sustains so many of the chapters and you personally. And I think it is something that is needed more than people realize, as you said. And I love the Frederick Douglass quote. I think it's beautiful and it's so true. Starting early and starting with the capacity to give and to receive, and that you're worth it. And that is such a huge message, because the repair later is so much harder. What is something that outsiders, or maybe even a few insiders, don't know about sleep in heavenly peace?
They don't always know that we build the beds. I think they sometimes think we buy the beds and deliver the beds. They don't know that we use raw lumber, that nothing is used. So there's some misconceptions. There's also misconception, which is fine, that we accept donated beds, which we don't. So, you know, it is hard telling people, no, I'm sorry, we can't accept that donation. But if you want to come volunteer, or if you want to, you know, buy some bedding or do a bedding drive, like, we give them alternative choices in terms of giving back. So that's hard, is that they have to understand we have a warehouse, like we manufacture and build beds, and we deliver them and we install them. We don't just drop off the headboards and side rails and safety rails and mattress and say, here you go, like IKEA, put it together.
Right.
We build it, and the kid jumps in the bed or lies in the bed, and it's their home. It's their little home.
Yeah, it is their little home. And also, when you take the time to think about what kind of bedding they want in terms of thematics, I love that, because people do have their personal choices and tastes, and it needs to be honored. That's part of who they are.
If you don't mind, I just want to share a quick story yesterday.
Please.
During bed builds, it's, you know, we have a great system. It's very structured, but things happen. So yesterday we were delivering beds, and I was delivering in an area close to where I live here in the Woodlands. And there was an Ironman event, a triathlon going on.
Wow.
We couldn't get to the apartment complex because of all the traffic, and it was just madness. So I was very frustrated because I wanted to get the bed to the family. The family reached out. I said, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So we got there at the end of the day. It was like 1:30 later in the day. And the family was there. It was fine. 2 little girls, sweet little girls from Colombia. And they're putting the bed together, the volunteers, because they're awesome. They're figuring it out. And they said to me in Spanish, they want to practice their English, you know? And it was such a sweet moment, because here I was speaking English, and I taught English in Japan. And it was just like this cross-cultural experiences that, like, people want to understand you. They want to know you. And that even though I could speak some Spanish, they wanted to speak my language. Is that when somebody does something for you, it brings them closer to you.
Exactly.
They take that next scary step towards you. And as we live in a very diverse society, the border states, they're not border states, they're Latino states.
Right.
They're Latino states. And I love that. There's a richness there. There's other cultures here besides Hispanic population. But I love the fact that that bed is like, it cuts across any culture or language divide. It cuts across all of it. It's like food in a way too. So that bed is like this nourishment for your brain, your soul, your heart. And that's what it is we're providing nourishment for the community.
Absolutely, darling. And what themes did they pick? The same theme or different themes?
So it was interesting about that. It was 2 girls, like I think it was like 5 and 7. And we showed up, and I'm like, oh, did she want her own bed? And the mom said to me in Spanish, she's like, oh no, she likes to sleep with her sister. She doesn't like to sleep alone.
Yeah.
So I took a photo of them and all that, the family, but like that was actually the first time I've ever seen that. Yeah. They wanted one bed for 2 girls because the little girl, that was her choice.
The safety. And then you might hear from them again in 2 years that says, okay, we're ready for bed number 2.
Right.
Perfectly fine. Yep, of course.
We come back, if it's a 2-year-old, like I try to be intentional. I give a business card to every delivery with my contact. I say, please share with your family, friends. If you need more beds for your younger ones, just reach out to us.
Last, quick and gutsy. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to talk about or endorse your chapter of Sleep in Heavenly Peace in Montgomery County and surrounding area, who might that be?
So the original celebrity who did that was Mike Rowe on Returning the Favor in 2019.
That's
so he's
great.
already checked that box. He's given a lot. He highlights people giving. He's a great guy. There's so many great people out there that are just doing. I think locally, JJ Watt, for what he did for Houston during the hurricane. He's retired now, NFL player. You're probably familiar with JJ Watt. I would say JJ Watt would be somebody who could just blow this up on another level, because he would come out for a bed build or bed delivery.
It'd be great.
SHP has partnered with sports organizations. I think in Dallas, they partnered with some of the NCAA college teams up there.
Excellent.
So there are those potential partnerships, but I think JJ Watt would be awesome.
So one quick last thing before we head off is, how can folks reach you? I know you said it before, but I'd like to end with, how can folks reach you? Those who want to volunteer and those who want to apply to get a bed.
Sure. So since your podcast is national or international, I guess too, right? I mean, listeners all over, they can go to the shpbeds.org website to request a bed, and that will zone it down to their zip code, whatever state. And then if they want to volunteer with our chapter, we have on Facebook, Sleep in Heavenly Peace, Montgomery County, Texas chapter. And we post our events on there to sign up. They can also donate on our Facebook page or donate on our chapter specific website. And $25 to $35 is bed in a bag. A bed is about $250. Time, treasure, talent. If someone has an idea on how we could do our chapter better, we'll listen. You know, we're open to ideas and different strategies too.
I love that. Beautifully said.
Well, thank you for what you're doing and all your hard work. And I can tell by the questions that you've asked and just this whole concept, this whole platform, that this is something that should be around forever. I hope that you have your 1,000, number 2,000 or 3,000 episode, and that I get to hear it.
Oh, you're so great. I love that. Well, I was just about to thank you because you took time to talk with me today about this incredible chapter and this incredible organization. The original organization started 11 years ago, your chapter only since 2021, which, by the way, was the birth year of Small and Gutsy. And I just want to thank you for giving me the time. And my wish for you is that you grow chapters and you continue to transform lives, because that's what you're really doing. And I so appreciate this.
You are. Thank you for everything you're doing.
All of the Small and Gutsy episodes can be found on the Intrinsic Group website, which has a Small and Gutsy page. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and do not reflect the position of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. We just want you to learn about the Small and Gutsy nonprofit and social impact organizational sector so they can spread their story and their impactful work. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, my brilliant sound engineer and composer, Pavel Franson, my very talented graphic designer, Nate Addy. Please check out their bios on the Intrinsic website. My incredible board of directors, Tracy Brown, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Serena Rajabian, who believed in me and this project enough so to sign on to support this effort, and all of the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. A very special thank you to my biggest champion, number one fan, and best friend, without whom none of this would be possible. Thanks, Mark Witkoff. Thanks for being there. And thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Witkoff. Thanks for listening.